Brandon Cutler here from AEW, and I hope you guys have an awesome podcast with the MonsterCast.
What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, Fightful here. You're watching the MonsterCast with Jack and Ryan. A big shout out to those fellas. Good people. Check them out.
Here's your host of the MonsterCast, the Straight Edge Monster, Jack and Ryan.
It's been reported by Dave Meltzer that not only is merch at an all-time high in wrestling, but so are ratings, attendance, everything. Like, it's fucking nuts. So my question is this a new major boom of wrestling, or is this just a blip on the radar and it's all going to settle out and be normal in a relatively short fashion?
I'm sorry. He said ratings are at an all-time high. Like
comparative, you know what I'm talking about. Like, comparatively speaking to the downgrade from cable. He's not saying cable ratings are at an all-time high.
Okay.
Just saying ratings in general. Ticket sales are at an all-time high.
Is he adjusting for inflation on that?
Yeah, he has to be. He has to be. Like, there's no way it's not. Even the Attitude Era stuff, he said it's the merch sales right now are higher than Attitude Era, higher than Hogan Era for WWE alone, let alone WWE, who's also making a shit ton off of merch sales.
The only reason that I could imagine that would possibly be true, if it's accounting for inflation too, is just that the e-commerce model of like internet shopping and shit has changed things significantly enough to where.
But what I'm saying is that it wasn't that high in 2022 or 2021 or 2020, where the e-commerce model was the exact same. So what I'm saying is, do you think this is just a blip, an anomaly, or is this something that's we're seeing like actually going to be a rise?
So, assuming everything is adjusted for inflation, my first thought on that would be yes, it probably wasn't the same in 2021, in 2020 or whatever. AEW as a company was just starting out. And then WWE was probably on like a slightly upward trajectory. So then as AEW is coming up and then WWE is coming up too, they kind of meet at some cross point up here. So if you go back in time a little bit, then yeah, 2021 might not be as high. So it's really just the growth of AEW that's probably pushing a lot of that. When you're talking about two companies and their merch sales plus the e-commerce model, it makes more sense than looking at like Attitude Era shit or like even, like early 2000s type WWE only. So maybe.
Also working for them in all of this is an extra show for AEW with Collision. You got a extra pay-per-view with All In that's sold a shit ton of tickets. You've got WWE selling their entire company with new TV deals coming up, which will be interesting to see how that plays out. And AEW possibly renewing up with WBD as well. Do you think those are all factors as well into all this? Of why numbers are up.
I mean, again, without knowing exactly what he's citing, it'd be hard to say. Is this something he said on Twitter or what?
I believe it was on Twitter, yes.
Let me see what context.
It was a while ago. I don't know how long it's going to take you to find it, unless you just search merch, I guess, and it should pop up on his shit. I mean, I think the main part of the conversation was merch, but I believe he mentioned other things too. And hopefully it was a quote tweet and not a reply, or you're not going to fucking take forever to find it.
Okay.
Should have just copied and pasted it onto my fucking notepad.
There's more overall viewing, and that all the measurable numbers like attendance, ticket sales, and merch are at a high point from the past 20 years, or a high point period. The question that he's responding to is, do you think there's more individuals watching or more wrestling being watched by a percentage of the fan base?
Well, we're absolutely consuming more wrestling than we were.
Yeah, that's true.
For sure. Like, that's not even a question.
More overall viewing, and that all the measurable numbers like attendance, ticket sales, and merch are at a high point from the past 20 years, or a high point period. I just can't imagine that ticket sales right now are higher. Attendance is higher right now than like 1999 or like 98.
See, I thought that too, but if you've been paying attention to WWE shit and articles every time they've had one of these fucking shows this past year, I swear they've been fucking I don't know about attendance, but the gate, for instance, are all record breakers. They've been touting all these shows as record breakers. They just broke the record in fucking Money in the Bank. They just broke the record in Puerto Rico. They just broke the record in fucking some random ass town in Connecticut type deal.
But when they do that, they are not accounting for inflation, because WWE loves to say shit like that. And they wouldn't intentionally like say, "Oh, well, accounting for inflation is actually not the highest."
Well, see, that's the thing. I would have to go back and see if they're referencing attendance and the ticket sales or just the gate. But yeah, I mean, but it is a thing that they've been fucking just touting constantly. Yeah. But that could also be, like you said, because they're trying to sell these TV rights as well to people.
Right.
But yeah, it's fucking nuts. Like, if you think about it, even 20 years, like, let's say he meant that specifically 20 years ago is 2003, 2002, 2003. So that's the end of the Attitude Era right there. So it's still technically Attitude Era before we get to the Ruthless Aggression Era or whatever.
Well, the thing is, in his tweet, he says we are at a high point from the past 20 years or a high point period. And I think the high point period, I think might not be entirely true, but probably for the last 20 years, I can see that, yeah.
It's fucking insane.
Yeah. Here's the thing, too. Even if it's less people, like let's say it is less people total, I do think people are spending more on it. So for like merch sales and things like that.
I've never spent more on a wrestling promotion in my life than I have for AEW.
Right. And I think that having two big brands, I think that, like I was talking about earlier, the e-commerce model making the stuff like super accessible. I wonder what the percentage of so there's an interesting statistic when it comes to measuring something's growth over time, and I say we because I do data stuff for work, but there's a way to measure stuff where it's like you're not measuring how much money you're making or how much people are spending like in flat dollars over time because it's not as valuable, but what percentage of their income they're spending on it. So especially with like movie tickets, like way back in the past or whatever, if movie tickets cost like $3, but everybody was only making $7.50 an hour, that's almost half of their hourly rate. Whereas now, if a movie ticket is like $6, but most people are making $15 an hour, then it's technically more. And if you adjust it for inflation, and inflation in that same time frame probably hasn't doubled the price. But if you do it as percentage of income, then it becomes a completely different statistic to measure. So that is something I would be curious to look at specifically for the like the ticket sales and how much tickets cost now versus what they cost then, adjust it for inflation, and then figure out percentage of income. But yeah, all this stuff is like very in my wheelhouse as far as like what I actually do for work. So it's always interesting to me when somebody says something like this because I always want to go and dig into it. But yeah, I mean, if that's true, that's great. And it makes sense on its surface. Like intuitively, it makes sense because there are two major companies, and we are in a period where consumption is pretty easy.
Yeah, and yeah, like I was about to say, not only do you have the AEW acting in the for lack of a better company to use, a WCW term, like they're WCW right now, the WWE. So you have the two major companies, and then now it's easier to access New Japan than it was when WCW actually existed, when you had to trade tapes and all that shit. So it's easier to go get this with the streaming service and stuff. A lot of people are saying like the streaming service is killing Disney on one hand in the actual movie theaters by having the streaming service, because everybody knows that they're just going to throw it up there as soon as they can so that people keep having the fucking streaming service. And then they're looking at the box office bombs and they're like, oh, that movie sucked, but it's got good reviews. It's because you have the streaming service and they already subscribe to that. There's no reason to go to the fucking movie theater to go spend all that money on it. Now in wrestling, I think that's working to their advantage though, because now I can go watch fucking New Japan anytime I want for $8 a month or whatever. You got Ring of Honor sitting there on a streaming service. You got Stardom on a streaming service, and you don't have to fucking worry about all that outside shit, because there's nothing where it's like, oh, I have to go to the movie theater to watch these things. So it's the streaming service is actually benefiting the WWE and New Japan and all these other companies, Ring of Honor, and hopefully one day AEW. Whereas in other forms of entertainment, I don't think they're helping as much.
is one of the topics that you've written out, because I don't want to go into it if you've already got it, but do you have the AEW 12 pay-per-views thing as a topic?
No, I had it,
Okay.
but I was getting a shit ton of topics, so I had to cut some stuff. But you
I'm
can
gonna jump into
lump it in. You can lump it in here.
Here's why I think it's relevant to the conversation, especially on the streaming end of things. So, Warner Brothers is apparently the one asking AEW to run 12 pay-per-views a year, and my question is, why the fuck does Warner Brothers care how many pay-per-views they run? Because pay-per-views aren't on TBS; they're not on TNT.
Because
So
Warner Brothers owns BR.
Yeah, but they're not exclusively doing it on BR. Like they also do it on like Fight and stuff, right?
Yes, for everything outside of the US, yes.
So I wonder how much of that has to do with like them wanting to do more for exclusivity for streaming stuff too, like throwing it on.
Yes,
Max.
I want them off of BR completely. I don't give a fuck if Warner Brothers owns them. I want it on HBO Max, because if that's the main, or just Max, my bad. Because Max is the big thing that you're pushing right now, because you've combined the two companies together. Then I feel like that's what they're trying to push it for. But I don't know what the contract status is between AEW and BR, because I feel like if it was an open-ended thing, he could have got off of that at any time. There's clearly a contract in place that he has to be on there so many times or for so long before they can break off and find a new way to process these fucking pay-per-views for somebody else through a different outlet.
Yeah.
Because like that's what everybody's been complaining about with the two pay-per-views back to back, and they've just officially, well, it's not official, it's not been announced by AEW, but it's been reported that All In is going to be on the BR app. Well, guess what? All Out's going to be on the BR app. That's a fucking $100 in a week. And a lot of people aren't going to do. They're going to choose one or the other, and it's going to make you look bad when you release those numbers as Tony Khan.
I don't think they're both going to be full price.
Well, that's what they're saying. They said they might release them as a bundle, but that's still hurting you though.
I think if you do both for like $69.99.
I don't understand why All In would be a thing that you have to put on BR anyway, because it's not a pay-per-view that you ever had before, right? It was something that Ring of Honor did, and then you got the rights to it after you bought the Ring of Honor library. So this is a fifth thing. Why are we not making a deal with fucking WB to put it on fucking HBO Max? Or Max, I keep fucking calling it HBO Max, but why are you not putting it on fucking Max to stream it on there? There's no fucking thing that's in the contract. I can't imagine there would be a thing in the contract that Tony Khan signed with his lawyers looking over it. Talking about hey, if you decide to run some more fucking pay-per-views, we get the rights to those to show them on BR as well. Away from the 4 that you do. I cannot imagine he would said yeah to that.
Hey guys, did you like that video? If so, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can also catch full episodes of the MonsterCast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And you can also catch us live every Sunday on Twitch. All links in the description below, along with some sweet merch from yours truly, the MonsterCast. Deuces.